The wreckage of the alien battleship floated silently in the void, its once proud hull now torn and lifeless. Commander Ethan Hale tightened his grip on the controls of the small human salvage ship as they approached the debris. His crew worked quickly, scanning for valuable materials, but Ethan's eyes were drawn to something deeper within the ruins, a faint energy reading. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange," said Anna, the ship's technician. "It's not just power. There's something alive in there." Ethan frowned. "Alive? Out here? After a battle like this?" Anna nodded, her face pale. "It's faint, but it's there. Should we check it out?" Against his better judgment, Ethan decided to investigate. "Gear up," he said, his voice firm. "Let's see what's hiding in this mess." The team suited up and entered the alien ship, the dim corridors eerily quiet. The air smelled of burnt metal, and the walls were scorched from heavy weapon fire. It was clear this ship had been in a fierce battle, but against who or what was unclear. As they moved deeper, the energy reading grew stronger, leading them to a sealed chamber. The door was massive and ornate, covered in alien symbols that none of them could read. Anna worked to bypass the lock, her fingers flying over her tools. "Whatever's behind this door, it's not standard tech," she muttered. "It's heavily shielded." "Can you get it open?" Ethan asked. Anna hesitated, then nodded. "Almost there. Just a few more seconds." The door hissed and slid open, revealing a sight that took their breath away. Inside the chamber, suspended in a shimmering field of energy, was a figure unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. She was tall, her skin a deep, iridescent shade of blue that seemed to glow faintly in the low light. Her features were sharp and regal, with silver markings that traced intricate patterns across her face and arms. A crown-like structure rested on her head, and her eyes, closed for now, seemed to radiate a sense of authority even in her unconscious state. "Is that an alien queen?" whispered Anna, her voice barely audible. Ethan stepped closer, his hand hovering near the controls of the energy field. The readings were complex, a mix of stasis and containment. This wasn't just a prison. It was a trap designed to hold someone powerful. "We need to be careful," Ethan said, his voice low. "Whoever put her in here didn't want her getting out." Before he could say more, the queen's eyes snapped open. They glowed like molten silver, piercing and cold. Her gaze locked onto Ethan, and for a moment, he felt an unexplainable pressure in his mind, as if she were sifting through his thoughts. "You dare touch me, human." Her voice was sharp and commanding, echoing in the chamber despite her confinement. Ethan took a step back, startled. He hadn't expected her to speak, let alone in perfect English. "We're here to help," he said, keeping his tone calm. "Who are you? What happened to your ship?" The queen's expression hardened, her silver eyes narrowing. "Help. Do not insult me with such lies. You are scavengers, vultures feeding on the remains of my empire." Ethan clenched his jaw, but kept his voice steady. "We didn't cause this. We found your ship drifting. If you want to survive, you'll need to trust us." The queen's laugh was bitter. "Trust a human. I would rather face the void than rely on your kind." A loud warning alarm interrupted their exchange. Anna glanced at her scanner, her face pale. "Commander, we've got incoming. Another ship just entered the sector, and it's not friendly." Ethan turned back to the queen. "We don't have time to argue. Either we get you out of here now, or whoever's coming will finish what they started." For the first time, hesitation flickered across her face. She was proud, but even she couldn't ignore the threat. After a long moment, she gave a slight nod. "Do what you must, human. But know this, I owe you nothing." Ethan nodded, signaling to his crew. "Let's move. We got to get her out of here before it's too late." As they worked to deactivate the stasis field, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far larger and far more dangerous. The air on the salvage ship felt thick with tension as Ethan, Anna, and the rest of the crew hurried to make the necessary preparations. The alien queen, Valera, stood at the center of the room, watching them with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Despite being freed from her energy prison, she still didn't trust the humans around her. "We need to move quickly," Ethan said, turning to Anna as she worked on the control panel. "How long until we can get this ship moving?" Anna glanced up, her face pale with worry. "It'll take a few minutes, Commander. The damage to the ship's systems is severe, but I'm sure I can get the engines back online." Valera's voice cut through the tension, sharp and demanding. "You waste your time, human. This ship is a ruin. It will fall apart before it reaches any place of safety." Ethan met her gaze, trying not to let her words affect him. "We'll see about that. You're lucky we're even trying to help you." Valera's lips curled into a thin, mocking smile. "Help me? You mean use me? Do not think I am unaware of your intentions, human. You are no different from the others who sought to control my people." Ethan frowned, but before he could respond, the ship's alert system blared once more. Anna quickly turned to the screen. "Commander, it's them. They're getting closer." "Who's getting closer?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with urgency. "Enemy ships," Anna answered. "Looks like a large fleet. They're coming straight for us." Valera's eyes narrowed, and she stepped closer to the control panel, her movements graceful and commanding. "Fools. You cannot outrun them. The battle is lost before it begins." "Not if we have anything to say about it," Ethan replied, his mind racing. He wasn't about to let some alien queen determine his crew's fate. Not now. Not when they had already risked so much. "We'll fight." He turned to his crew, all of whom were ready, waiting for his orders. They had trained for moments like this, but this was different. There was something about Valera's presence, her quiet authority, that weighed heavily in the air. "We're not just fighting for survival," Ethan continued. "We're fighting to get her out of here. And if we don't succeed, we might never get another chance. So get to your stations. Prepare for combat." As his crew scattered to their posts, Valera turned to him with a look of both amusement and disbelief. "You plan to fight them with this?" She gestured toward the small salvage ship. "You are weaker than I thought." Ethan met her gaze, the fire in his eyes unwavering. "Sometimes it's not about strength. It's about knowing when to fight and when to survive. We'll do what we can." For a long moment, there was silence between them. Valera's eyes seemed to soften just a little. "You humans, always so determined. It will either get you killed, or it will keep you alive. I am curious which it will be." "We'll find out soon enough," Ethan said, his voice firm. He wasn't about to let the Queen's doubts shake his resolve. Anna's voice interrupted them. "Commander, I've got the engines back online. We're ready to go." "Good. Get us out of here," Ethan said. "And tell everyone to brace themselves. It's going to be a rough ride." The ship shuddered as its engines roared to life. The crew braced themselves as they felt the force of acceleration. But Ethan couldn't shake the sense that they were racing against something far bigger than just enemy ships. They had no idea who, or what, was after them. Valera moved to stand beside him, her eyes scanning the space ahead. "You are far more resourceful than I gave you credit for, human," she said quietly. Ethan didn't answer, his focus still on the task at hand. His ship shot through the wreckage, dodging debris and enemy ships as best as they could. He had no intention of letting anything, especially not some alien force, take them down now. But as the ship swerved to avoid a large piece of debris, Valera's voice broke through again, more urgent this time. "Behind us, human. They're closing in. You cannot outrun them." "We don't need to outrun them," Ethan said, his voice tight. "We just need to outsmart them." The battle for their lives had only just begun, and there was no turning back. The small salvage ship zipped through the debris field, its engines roaring to life as the crew worked tirelessly to keep it on course. Ethan's hands gripped the controls with determination, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. Behind them, the enemy fleet was closing in fast, their weapons primed and ready to strike. "We've got to shake them off," Ethan muttered under his breath, glancing at his tactical officer, Sarah. "Any ideas?" Sarah, her face set in concentration, looked at the enemy ships on her screen. "We've got 3 destroyers on our tail. They're fast, but if we can use the wreckage as cover, we might have a chance." Ethan nodded, but before he could give the order, Valera's voice rang out from behind him, cool and steady. "You cannot hide forever. They will find you. The battle is futile." Ethan clenched his teeth. "We'll take our chances. We're not giving up yet." Valera stood with her arms crossed, observing the humans with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. "You humans are stubborn. You will all die before you even understand what is coming for you." Ethan shot a quick look at her. "Maybe, but we've faced worse odds before." He turned back to the controls. "Sarah, get us to that wreckage field. Full speed ahead." The ship swerved, dodging blasts from the pursuing destroyers. The wreckage of the alien fleet, once a battleground, now served as a maze of floating debris. Large chunks of broken ships, jagged metal pieces, and twisted fragments littered the space. It was their best chance to evade the enemy, but it would be a risky maneuver. Anna, the ship's technician, called out from the back. "Commander, the ship's shields are weak. If we don't avoid these collisions, we'll lose power." Ethan's mind raced. The enemy ships were closing in too quickly, and the wreckage field was getting tighter by the second. They had only one option left. "Get ready to make a hard turn," he ordered, his voice steady despite the pressure. "We're going to have to outmaneuver them." As the crew braced themselves, Ethan pulled the ship into a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding a large piece of debris that loomed ahead. The ship rocked, but it held together. For a moment, it seemed like they might escape, until a massive explosion from behind sent a shockwave through the vessel. "Shields down to 30%. Anna shouted, her voice filled with panic. "Keep it together," Ethan barked. "We're almost through." But just as hope seemed to glimmer on the horizon, one of the destroyers fired again, this time hitting the port side of the ship. The impact sent the vessel spiraling toward the debris field. Ethan fought with the controls, his hand shaking slightly as he struggled to regain control. "Braced for impact," he shouted. The ship slammed into the side of a broken ship, its hull groaning under the pressure. The sudden stop threw everyone forward, but they held on, doing their best to stay steady. Sparks flew from the control panel, and Anna quickly began working to stabilize the systems. "We've lost power to the port engine," Anna said, grimacing as she worked furiously. "I can't get it back online. Not in time." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't allow fear to take hold. He had to think quickly. "Valera," he called, turning toward the alien queen. "You said you could help us. What can you do?" Valera tilted her head, studying the humans before her. "I will not fight for you, human. I am not your pawn." Ethan clenched his fists in frustration. "We're all going to die if you don't do something." Valera's eyes flickered, a strange emotion passing across her face, something that almost resembled pity. "You humans, always so eager to throw yourselves into danger without understanding the cost." For a brief moment, there was silence. Then, to Ethan's surprise, Valera stepped forward, placing her hand on the console. Her silver eyes glowed brighter as she channeled something through the ship's systems. "Fine," she said coldly. "But remember this. I do this because I am curious to see how your species will survive, not because I owe you anything." The ship's systems hummed to life as Valera's energy flooded into the power grid. The port engine sputtered, then roared back to life, enough to steer them clear of the debris. Ethan's eyes widened. You actually did it." Valera withdrew her hand, looking almost bored. "It was not difficult. But understand this, human. My help does not come without consequences." Before Ethan could respond, Anna's voice cut in. "Commander, the enemy ships are getting closer. We don't have much time." Ethan's mind raced. They were still a long way from safety, but they now had a chance. Full speed ahead. Get us out of here. The ship surged forward, propelled by the energy Valera had provided. But Ethan knew this escape was only temporary. The real challenge was yet to come. The ship was moving faster now, thanks to Valera's unexpected assistance. The powerful engines hummed with new life as the crew braced themselves for whatever came next. Ethan sat in the cockpit, his hands steady on the controls, but his mind was racing. They were far from out of danger. The enemy fleet was still hot on their tail, and time was running out. "How long until we're out of range?" Ethan asked, his eyes scanning the view ahead. Anna, working quickly at her console, answered, "At this speed, maybe another 15 minutes. But that's assuming they don't catch up first." Ethan clenched his jaw. The enemy fleet was closing in with each passing second. They didn't have 15 minutes to spare. "Valera," Ethan said, turning to the alien queen. She stood tall, her cold gaze fixed on the view ahead, as if she were above it all. "We need a way to buy some time. Something to slow them down." Valera raised an eyebrow, a slight smirk tugging at her lips. "You ask a great deal from me, human. But then again, you seem to be doing better than I expected." Ethan's frustration bubbled to the surface. "We don't have time for games. Help us, or we'll all die. That's your choice." The alien queen's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. "You believe I care for your fate. Do not mistake my actions for loyalty, human. I helped because I'd find your species. Fascinating. But I will not risk my life for you." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He had to keep the situation under control, no matter how difficult. "Fine," he said. "If you won't help us out of the kindness of your heart, then help us for something else. What do you want in return?" Valera's smirk widened. "Ah, now we get to the heart of the matter. You think you can bargain with me?" "We'll give you something," Ethan said, his voice firm. "Protection, a safe place, away from the chaos of this war. You'll have the resources you need to rebuild. You'll have power." Valera's gaze softened, just for a moment. "And what do you expect in return?" Ethan met her eyes. "You stay out of our way. You help us escape. You give us a chance to survive. And when this is all over, you'll owe us. We're not asking for your loyalty, just an understanding." For a long moment, Valera said nothing. The silence in the ship was heavy, thick with the weight of the decision that was about to be made. Ethan could feel his heart beating in his chest, each second stretching into eternity. Finally, the queen spoke, her voice calm but with an unmistakable edge. "You are daring, human. Very well. I will help you. But know this. I do not forget. This bargain you offer will bind you to me." Ethan nodded. He didn't have time to think about the consequences of this decision. They needed her help, and it was the only way forward. "Thank you," he said, his voice tense with the pressure of the moment. "Now how do we slow them down?" Valera's eyes glowed faintly, her voice cool and controlled. "There is a trick I know, an energy pulse that can disrupt their communications and weapon systems. It will buy us some time, but it will also reveal our position. You will have to move quickly after that." Anna looked up from her station, her expression skeptical. "Can we even survive an attack if they know where we are?" Valera turned to Anna, her gaze sharp and calculating. "You will have to be clever, human. You are the ones who wanted to live. Are you not?" Ethan turned to Anna, his mind already working through the possibilities. "Do it. We'll take the risk." The crew scrambled into action. Anna quickly accessed the ship's systems, working to prepare the energy pulse. As she did, Sarah and the others readied the ship for the next phase of their escape. Everyone knew the stakes. This was it, the last chance to escape alive. Valera stood still, watching them work, her expression unreadable. Ethan could sense the weight of the bargain they had just made. He had no idea what consequences it might bring, but it didn't matter. They had no choice. They needed to survive. "Ready," Anna said, her voice tight with concentration. "Pulse is set. Firing now." With a hum, the ship released the energy pulse. The screens flashed with static as the pulse shot into the vast space, disrupting the enemy fleet's communications and weapon systems. For a moment, everything was quiet, as though the universe held its breath. The enemy ship slowed, confused by the sudden loss of coordination. But Ethan knew it wouldn't last long. They had only minutes before the enemy regained control. "Go!" Ethan shouted. Full speed ahead. The ship surged forward, the engines roaring as they broke free of the wreckage field and shot into open space. But the enemy ships wouldn't stay down for long. They had to move fast. This battle wasn't over yet. The ship raced through the black expanse of space, its engines roaring at full power. The brief disruption caused by Galira's energy pulse had given them a precious moment to escape, but the enemy fleet was already regaining control. The ticking clock of their survival echoed in Ethan's mind as he gripped the controls tightly. "We can't outrun them forever," Sarah said, her voice strained as she worked at the tactical station. "They're fast, and they won't stop until they've caught us." "We don't need to outrun them," Ethan replied, his tone sharp. "We just need to outsmart them." He turned to Valera, whose cold eyes remained focused on the stars outside the ship's window. "You said you could help us. Now's the time. What do you know about their tactics? How can we keep them from following us?" Valera didn't immediately respond, her gaze unwavering. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and calculating. "The enemy will pursue relentlessly, yes, but they are predictable. Their fleet operates on a single command structure. If we can sever their connection, we can scatter them." Ethan's brow furrowed in thought. "How do we do that? We don't have the firepower to fight them head-on." "You misunderstand," Valera said, her lips curling into a slight smile. "We do not need to fight. We need to confuse them." Anna looked up from her console, her face lit by the glow of the ship's systems. "Confuse them? How?" Valera's eyes gleamed as she glanced over her shoulder. "I have an idea, but it requires your cooperation." Ethan gave her a sharp nod. "What do we need to do?" "There is a communications relay in the core of their fleet. If I can access it, I can send a false command. Their ships will receive conflicting orders, causing chaos and confusion among their forces." Ethan's mind raced. This sounded like their only shot, and how do we access the relay? "It is on one of their lead ships," Valera replied. "I can help you get close enough to plant a virus in their system. Once I do that, their fleet will fall apart." Ethan exchanged a look with Sarah and Anna. It was risky, almost impossible, but it was the best chance they had. They had no time to waste. "Get us as close as possible," Ethan ordered. "If we fail, we're dead. But if we succeed, it could give us enough time to disappear into deep space." Anna nodded and began working on the ship's course, adjusting trajectory for a close approach. "It's going to be tricky. Anything we do will make us visible." Valera's voice was steady as she spoke, but there was an edge to it. "You humans are clever, but you are also reckless. This plan is fraught with danger. Do not expect me to save you if you fail." Ethan looked at the Queen with a cold stare. "We're all in this together now. We're not asking you to save us. We're asking you to help us survive." For a moment, Valera's expression softened. "You may regret this," she said quietly. Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he turned back to the front, watching the stars speed past as the ship veered toward the heart of the enemy fleet. Every second counted. The enemy could be on them in moments. "We're almost in range," Anna said, her fingers flying across the controls. "It's going to be a very tight window. Once we're close enough, we'll have to make a quick exit. We'll get in, plant the virus, and get out," Ethan confirmed. "No time to waste." Prepare for evasive maneuvers. The ship grew closer to the enemy fleet. Ethan's pulse quickened as he watched the massive ships grow larger on the sensors. There were at least 5 destroyers and several smaller vessels patrolling the area. Each one was armed to the teeth, and they were beginning to take notice of the small human ship approaching them. The ship shuddered as a warning flashed on the control panel. "They've locked onto us," Sarah said, her voice tense. "We're visible on their radar. They'll fire any second." "Prepare to make the jump," Ethan ordered. "Once Valera accesses the relay, we'll make a hard turn. That's our only chance." Valera moved with eerie calm, her fingers gliding over the ship's terminal. "Give me a moment," she said, her voice steady despite the danger. "This is not a simple task." The seconds dragged by, each one feeling like an eternity. The enemy ships were closing in fast, their weapons charging for a strike. Ethan could see the blasts in the distance as their sensors locked onto their ship. "Valera, hurry," Ethan urged, his grip tightening on the controls. "I'm doing what I can," she replied, her voice unshaken. "Patience is required." Suddenly, the ship shook violently, and Ethan knew the enemy had fired. Sparks flew from the console, and alarms blared through the ship's corridors. They were under attack. "Valera," Ethan shouted again, his voice rising in urgency. "Now." In that moment, Valera's fingers moved swiftly, and a soft beep confirmed she had done it. Done. Before Ethan could react, the entire enemy fleet seemed to falter. Ships slowed, their communications scrambled, and confusion rippled through their formation. Ethan exhaled, feeling the glimmer of hope. "Now, we run." The ship jolted again, this time more violently. Ethan's grip tightened on the controls as the enemy fired once more, their weapons streaking across space like fiery arrows. But this time, they didn't hit. The enemy fleet was in disarray, their ships slowing and veering off course in the wake of Valera's viral attack. "Go," Ethan yelled, his voice filled with urgency. "We've got to move now." Anna was already maneuvering the ship, pushing it to its limits. "Full power to engines. I'm making the jump. Hold on." The small ship surged forward, cutting through space at breakneck speed. Ethan could see the enemy ships in the distance, still confused but regaining their composure. They wouldn't be off their tail for long. Ethan's heart raced in his chest. They were close now, too close. The window of opportunity was tiny, and they had to make it count. One wrong move and they'd be caught. "Valera, what happens now?" Ethan asked, glancing over at the alien queen. She stood motionless, her expression unreadable. "I've done my part," she said, her voice calm, almost detached. "The fleet will scatter, but they will regroup. They will come after you again." "And what do you suggest we do then?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with frustration. Valera turned her cold gaze to him, her eyes glinting. "You have more tricks up your sleeve than I first realized. You will figure it out." Anna's voice came over the intercom, sharp and focused. "We're too close to the main fleet. They'll lock onto us again if we don't make a jump soon." Ethan glanced at the flashing coordinates on his screen. He could see the enemy ships beginning to recover from the confusion. Their engines were coming back online, and they were about to re-establish their formation. The window for escape was closing fast. "Prepare to jump to the outer rim," Ethan ordered. "We'll have to outrun them there." "But it's a blind jump," Anna said. "We could end up in the middle of nowhere." "It's better than being caught in the middle of their fleet," Ethan replied firmly. "We don't have a choice." The enemy ships were gaining speed. Ethan could see them aligning for another attack, their weapons charging. They were ready to fire, and if they hit, the ship would be torn apart. "Do it now, Anna," Ethan shouted, his voice urgent. Anna didn't hesitate. With a single press of a button, the ship's engines roared to life, and they shot forward into the unknown. The stars outside the window stretched into streaks of light as the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, disappearing into the vast emptiness of space. For a moment, everything was still. The deafening hum of the engines filled the cockpit, and the crew was silent, waiting. They had done it. They had escaped, at least for now. "We made it," Sarah said, her voice a mix of relief and disbelief. "I can't believe we actually made it." Ethan exhaled, the tension slowly leaving his body. They were safe, at least for the time being. But he knew better than to think they were completely free. The enemy wouldn't give up that easily. "How long until we can jump again?" Ethan asked, turning to Anna. Anna's fingers flew over the console as she worked quickly. "We need a moment to recharge the engines. It won't take long, but I don't recommend staying in one place too long. If they get a lock on us again." "We'll be ready," Ethan interrupted, cutting her off. He looked over at Valera, who still stood silently in the corner. "You did your part. We'll take it from here." Valera nodded but said nothing. Her expression remained distant, as if the events around her meant little. But Ethan could feel her eyes on him, calculating, assessing. "We're not out of this yet," Ethan said, his voice low but steady. "We still have a long way to go before we're truly safe." Valera finally spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. "You will need more than speed to escape them. They will follow you until the ends of the galaxy if they must." Ethan turned to face her, his jaw tightening. "Then we'll do what we've always done. We'll outsmart them. We'll survive." The ship hummed steadily as the engines cooled and recharged. Ethan stared out into the blackness of space, knowing that their next move had to be their best. The chase wasn't over. The enemy would find them, and when they did, it would be up to them to survive. "Prepare for the next jump," Ethan said, his voice resolute. "And this time, we're going somewhere they won't expect." The quiet hum of the ship's engines filled the cockpit as the crew braced themselves for whatever lay ahead. The stars outside had stretched into lines of light, signaling that they were traveling at unimaginable speeds, far beyond what any enemy could anticipate. But even in the void of space, the tension was palpable. The crew knew their escape was only temporary. "Engines are fully recharged," Anna reported, her fingers tapping rapidly across the control console. "We can jump again whenever you're ready." Ethan nodded, glancing at the other members of the crew. Sarah was at her station, eyes scanning the instruments for any sign of the enemy. Valera stood in the corner, her cold gaze fixed on the endless expanse outside. The alien queen had been oddly quiet since their narrow escape, but Ethan could sense her calculating mind at work. "We're not safe yet," Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "The enemy won't stop, but we've got a chance to get ahead of them." "What do we do now?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. She wasn't one to panic, but after everything that had happened, even she couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. "We do what we always do," Ethan replied, his eyes narrowing with resolve. "We survive. We make our next move before they can catch up." Valera turned her gaze to him, a hint of something almost like respect in her eyes. "You are determined, human. I will give you that." Ethan didn't respond to her comment. He was used to her cold demeanor by now. They were allies for necessity, nothing more. But that didn't matter. As long as she helped them survive, he would take it. "I've been analyzing the enemy fleet," Valera continued, her voice calm and measured. "They are relentless, yes, but they are also predictable. I know how they think. We can use that." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "How?" "There is a region in space where their communication network is weak," Valera explained. "It is a blind spot in their surveillance system. If we make a jump there, we can hide long enough to lose them." Anna looked up from her console, her eyes full of doubt. "A blind spot? Can we really make it that far without them detecting us?" Valera nodded. "I've studied their methods. They will not expect us to hide in such an obvious location. It's their arrogance. They believe their technology is superior, but they overlook such weaknesses." Ethan considered her words for a moment. It sounded like a risk, but it was their best option. They couldn't keep running forever. If they wanted to truly escape, they would have to take a gamble. "All right," Ethan said, his voice firm. "Let's take that chance. Prepare for the jump, Anna." Anna's hands flew across the console as she made the necessary adjustments. "Ready to jump in 3, 2, 1. With a sudden lurch, the ship vanished from sight, plunging into the unknown once more. The crew felt the familiar shift as they passed through the fabric of space itself, the ship now traveling at unimaginable speeds toward the blind spot Valera had spoken of. For what felt like an eternity, there was nothing but the hum of the engines and the distant stars flashing by. The crew didn't speak. They simply waited. It felt as though the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for the outcome of this final gamble. Finally, the ship slowed, the stars outside shifting into their familiar positions. The jump had been successful. "We're in the blind spot," Anna confirmed, her voice soft but relieved. "I can't detect any enemy ships nearby. We've lost them." Ethan exhaled, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. They had done it. They had finally escaped. But even as he allowed himself a brief moment of peace, he knew that this was only the beginning of their journey. Valera stood up, her gaze still fixed on the stars. "This is a temporary victory, human. They will find us eventually. You will need more than speed and luck to survive this war." Ethan nodded. He had known from the start that this wasn't going to be easy. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of hope. They had outsmarted their enemies. They had survived. And for now, that was enough. "We'll figure it out," Ethan said, his voice filled with determination. "We always do." Sarah smiled faintly, and Anna gave a small nod of agreement. Valera said nothing, but her expression softened just a fraction. Perhaps in this moment, she had come to understand something about the humans she had once deemed beneath her. "We've made it this far," Ethan continued, his eyes on the vastness of space ahead of them. "And as long as we're still breathing, we'll keep fighting." For the first time, there was a sense of unity among them, a shared purpose. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were a team, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead.